Welcome to the Higher Self Podcast. The purpose of this podcast is to help you unravel anything keeping you from a life of true abundance, joy, and happiness, which is your birthright. Each week, we'll bring in different guests specifically tailored to help you on your journey to discovering your higher self. Whether it's spirituality, business, finances, health, or relationships, there are no topics that are off limits. So get ready and enjoy this week's episode on the higher self. Have you ever wanted to do something in your life and yet not known where to begin or how to start? This is the episode for you. Welcome to this week's episode of the Higher Self. I'm holding in my hands right now the bucket list journal. And I haven't even opened the book just yet, but the best part about it is in the back, it says, impossible is possible. And we have the author, Mr. Ben Nemtin here. Did I say that correctly?
Nailed it.
Nice, beautiful. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, man. Thank you for having me.
So I am excited about this one. And I'm excited because I'm in a space in my life where for so many years, I didn't travel, I didn't explore, I didn't do anything on a bucket list. I didn't have a bucket list. I didn't do anything. I just worked my ass off. And I just thought that that's what we do in life. And here you are, I'm looking at all these wonderful things like climb inside the Egyptian pyramids, spend a night in jail, be a knight for a day. You got interviewed by Oprah. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Love this. Let's see. Race horses. Host Saturday Night Live has not been accomplished just yet. Street perform and make $100. Run a marathon. It's so cool. All these things on the bucket list. I guess I want to first ask you, how did the bucket list begin?
Well, it's funny. I was in university, grew up in Victoria, British Columbia. And I spent the first part of my life living for other people, and I didn't even know it. So I thought I was checking all the boxes and sort of living the dream. Like I had an academic scholarship to university. I was on the national under-19 rugby team, which is a huge sport in Canada on the West Coast. And I felt like I had done everything, but I put so much pressure on myself to succeed. And I started to get anxiety around going to the World Cup, which was in Paris, France for the U19 World Cup. And I started to lose sleep over worrying about performing at the World Cup. And I started to get anxious and I started to lose sleep. And ultimately, I just slid right into a depression. And I'd never gone through any type of mental health crisis before in my life. And all of a sudden, I couldn't go to school. I couldn't go to practice. I was shut into my parents' house. Got to the point where I was so stuck in indecision, I couldn't really even leave the house. And my parents were trying everything. You know, my friends would pop by, but ultimately I was ashamed. I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know that I could ever bounce back from this, you know, and ultimately my friends literally pulled me out of the house after I dropped out of school. And they were like, you're coming with us to work in a new town for the summer. We're all going for the summer. And I started to meet different types of people. I got a job, so I started feeling a little bit of self-worth. I started to talk about what I was going through. But what was interesting, when you're in high school, you have this petri dish of people that you know, and it's a bubble, and you just feel like this is the world. And you don't know that there's more types of people out there. So I started meeting these interesting kids, and they were had done these cool things. They'd already traveled. They'd started businesses. And I was like, these kids are giving me energy. Like I'm getting energized from just being around these people. I was like, oh, some people give me energy. Some people draw energy from me. And so I was like, I'm going to try and only surround myself with people that inspire me. And so this was a small decision that totally changed everything for me, because I came back home and I thought of one person who was inspiring. And he was a filmmaker from my neighborhood, and I didn't know him very well at all. And I almost didn't reach out to him because I was like, this is dumb. What am I going to call him up and tell him that my biggest dream is to make a movie and he makes movies and we should do it together? He took my sister to prom. I was not about to but finally I was like, you know what? I'm trying to surround myself with people that are inspiring. And I called him up and he said yes. And we got his older brother and we got our other friend, Dave. who grew up in Victoria. We gathered and we thought, okay, let's make a list of everything we've always wanted to do. And let's take a 2-week road trip and let's go after that list. But also let's help other people achieve their bucket list items. And because at that point we're lost. And we thought, well, if we ask people, and this question we asked ourselves and we asked other people was, what do you want to do before you die? Because thinking about death made us think about life. Like it put things in perspective.
Yeah.
So we're like, if we don't know what we want to do, let's ask other people what they want to do, learn from them. If they've done it, they haven't done it, how did they do it? And also, if we can help them, then we will. And we'll do our bucket list on the side, but that's not what the film's going to be about. The film will be about asking people and helping them. And what was surprising to us is as soon as we started to travel, people were inspired to go after their bucket list just because we were going after ours. So we thought, wow, people are now writing their list and going after theirs just because we're going after ours. It's creating this ripple effect. So we just kept doing it. And so we would do it in the summers. We'd help other people. Our road trips would get longer. We'd throw parties to fundraise. We would cold call companies to get sponsorship. And so this 2-week road trip ended up lasting 10, 12 years.
Wow.
And the list items that we had written down that we thought were completely impossible. Like there was 2 rules when we wrote the list. Rule number 1, you had to pretend you had $10 million in your bank. Okay. And we were broke. Second rule, you had to pretend that you could do anything. Like anything, nothing was off the table. So we had go to space. We had, write a New York Times bestseller. And then we had like grow a mustache and compete in a go-kart derby, right? So anything that you ever dreamed of doing, we were going to do it. And we thought, let's just hit the road and try and do as many as we can and help other people. And it just caught fire. People heard about it and they started sending us emails being like, I saw like get up on a hot air balloon. My friend works for Remax. She can help you out. Like I saw make a toast at a stranger's wedding. My friend's getting married. I can get you in the wedding without anybody knowing. And so this huge sort of like inpouring of support and also people sending us their dreams, asking for our help. Oh. So the reason we just kept doing it was because there was so much energy around it. We were having so much fun. And we thought this is the best win-win. We get to do these things that we love. We get to inspire other people. And ultimately, when we help someone else achieve their dream, it actually feels even better than doing the stuff on our list.
For sure, man.
And so this was this unexpected long road trip that we went on, and we would do it in the summers when we were going to school. And ultimately, we took all this footage that we've been filming and we cut our own pilot and we ended up selling it to MTV. And that's when we moved down to LA, was to do a show. And that started to just get the word out even more. And, but never expected to move to LA, never expected to be sitting here. It was all actually inspired by a poem that my friend was assigned to an English class when we were trying to figure out what this documentary was going to be about. And the poem is called The Buried Life. The Buried Life, 150-year-old poem. It talks about how the day-to-day buries what you really want to do.
Yeah.
And as you said, like, you were working so hard because the day-to-day buries these things that are our true passions, that have no deadlines, that we think we have all this time to do. But ultimately, these are the regrets we have at the end of our life, not doing. And so we thought, wow, this poet 150 years ago is talking about the exact same feeling that we're feeling right now. Let's call this mission, this film, The Buried Life. And so now this whole journey is about unburying these dreams and being true to myself so that I can, make the most impact, but also feel most alive and stay on track and really make sure that I'm living for me, not for other people. Because ultimately, I think that was a big contributor to why I was feeling depressed when I was in university.
For sure, man. For sure. You said so much, and I want to break this down.
Yeah.
The first thing you said was, and kudos to you, man, because a lot of people are not conscious of this. You said, some people give me energy and some people take from my energy. Mm-hmm. And it's so interesting, man, is that what I find is that the people that take from your energy, they know how to take from your energy and not make you even realize it. Like they're really cunning at it.
It's like a slow drip.
Isn't it really?
Yeah.
Isn't it really? And I'm saying this because in my own life, like literally today, I finally had to cut one of those slow drippers by just saying, just don't talk to me. Just leave me alone. And when they message back, I just delete it and I just erase it. Mm-hmm. What was that journey like for you? Because that's a big one for people.
Yeah. Well, one is was the awareness of just one understanding that, oh yeah, I feel different around different people. And it's a feeling of, I feel like I can be more self-expressed around certain types of people. Like I can be more myself when I have more fun and I have more energy. And other people, for some reason, I feel it's difficult because you can't really put your finger on it. You can't even define it. You just sort of feel a little bit uneasy, or you just don't feel totally like, you're a little self-conscious, you're a little less, you have less energy. And so for me, it was, okay, I'm going to lean into relationships with people that I just love being around. Either they're the type of people that I have so much fun with, and ideally both, they're the type of people that are doing such cool things that just by being around them, it makes me feel like I can do cool, big things.
Yeah.
Because then it's like, if we're friends and I see you do this podcast, over time, I'm like, damn, like Danny's killing it with this podcast. Like,
why don't I do it too?
Why don't I do something?
Yeah.
Like if he did a podcast, maybe I can, start this, like do a marathon or like make YouTube videos or whatever. And I think when you see people that you don't know do things, like let's say, I see someone else that's got this big podcast, I think, well, like, they're good. Like they're better than me. They're smarter. That's why they're doing this podcast. I wish that I could be like them. But I know you, so I know you're not much different than me.
Right.
So I'm like, okay, Danny did it. God, he's not that smart.
Yeah.
Right? Like I can probably, start a YouTube video and start a YouTube channel. So by osmosis, you start to feel, it's like the high tide rise of the boats without you even knowing. You start to feel like, okay, maybe I can do something. And so this was this realization when I got inspired by a friend who started a clothing line. This is interesting. Actually, I forgot about this. So high school, I didn't know him very well. He starts a clothing line out of nowhere. And I was like, how'd you do that? You don't have any experience in fashion? And he's like, what do you mean? I did it. I borrowed some money and I started it. I'm like, wow. And I got involved. I was like, is there any way I can I help you do this? And I ended up helping him get on a blog or something. This is back in 2000, probably 4. Keep in mind, the Buried Life started in 2006. This is way pre-social that we started this. So they were like, blogs were big. And so I got him, helped him get on this blog. And I was like, wow, that was sort of easier than I thought. And I thought, well, if he made a clothing line, like what could I do? And I thought, I want to make a movie. I want to make a TV show with my friends or a movie with my friends. And that's when I thought about calling Johnny. So, I sought out this kid that had made this clothing line, and that led me to Johnny. And like-minded people tend to hang out with like-minded people, right? So the leaning into relationships and seeing if you can hang out with their groups of friends, you ultimately will find, I think, the same breed of people. And so I still try and do that. And that, again, like I told you that in the beginning of the story, like that was the thing that really changed my life forever, was being conscious of that and being aware of it. And I think it's tough when there's people in your life that you can't cut out, that just are negative, or they squash your dreams, or they're siphoning your energy. And so I do believe that if you cannot remove yourself from that orbit, the awareness and protecting yourself is important.
For sure. Knowing
that, like, okay, I'm going to see this person. I just need to know that I have to kind of protect my energy or just protect my well-being. And so that's sort of the thing that I try and do, is lean into relationships that really energize me and protect myself in other situations.
I love that, man. I love that. And the second thing that I caught, right, was, and again, most people don't have this awareness either, right? Because it's one thing to have an awareness of the energy factor, but then also you started to get anxiety over the very thing that you probably were dreaming of the most at that point in your time, which was like sports, and that became your identity. What did that feel like? Because that must have been pretty rough.
It was, the scariest time of my life was in the depths of that depression, because I was totally immobilized. Like I couldn't, I couldn't leave the house. I remember in the middle of the night, just, when I couldn't sleep, and that was the toughest part, was not being able to sleep.
I've been there, bro.
Yeah. Cause when you can't sleep, you're messed up. You can't function. And so it starts this downward spiral, and all you want to do is sleep, but you just can't.
Yeah.
And it's the dead of night, and you're up, and you're just like, fuck, like, how dark can this get? Like, that was the thing that was so scary for me. Is like, I didn't know how, I was afraid of the darkness, of how it was bad. It was really bad, but I was really afraid of if it got worse, And so that was the thing that I was so terrified of. And I thought I had lost who I was, Like, I used to be this A-type guy who loved being around people, and and all of a sudden, in a matter of months, I couldn't go hang out with friends. Like, I felt like I would never be the same. And I think that, if there's one thing to take away from this conversation, it's like, one, there's a lot of people struggling right now, more than ever.
Mm-hmm.
And if you are struggling, it won't last forever. And the biggest thing that has helped me is by talking about it to someone that cares about me, or a therapist, a professional, where you can start to break down these big, terrifying things that are going on in your head into more manageable thing, like, and actually give someone the opportunity to help you.
For sure.
And so I finally found someone that I could talk to, and I started to work through it. And then I realized, God, you know what? I didn't even really love rugby that much. Like, I did it because it's like football in the South. Like, it was the thing you did. And I loved being around my friends, and I loved but I wasn't built for that type of high pressure, high level athletics. It's just like, this is not me, I guess.
And that's okay.
Yeah. And I just wanted to be creative and, like, make things with my friends. And so I don't think that was the sole thing that brought me out of that depression, because there was therapy. I started to learn what I actually needed to be healthy. I prioritized sleep. I took pressure off myself to do so well in school and all this stuff. And I created, like, a real sort of harmony in my life. But I've been through a few depressions since then. And each time I go through one, I realize there's a big part of my life when I'm not being authentic to who I am. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And whether it's my work, or it's a relationship, or something where I have to be like, why am I feeling like I'm starting to get depressed? Like, what is going on? And so the thing that I love about a list is it forces you to slow down and think about who are you? What is important to you? And it's not just adventure and travel. That is one of 10 categories of your life. So this is why I wrote the journal, so that you can look at all 10 categories of your life. So what are your adventure travel goals? But what are your mental health goals? Like, what do you want to do to reduce stress? Physical health, creative goals, intellectual. What do you want to learn? You've got relationships, professional. So there's these 10 categories of life that you want to think about, I think, when you write your list. And all that is forcing you to look at, who am I, and how can I remind myself to be true to what I truly want? And I think when you write it down, you make it real, and then you start to sort of get over the barriers that stop most of us from achieving those.
For sure. And so you wrote your list down.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm noticing that a lot of the list has been crossed off.
A lot of the original 100 has been crossed off. And this was, so now there's 96 of 100 of the original list items that is crossed off. But I've also added a ton more. But the original 100 is in the journal, and I think that the reason I mention that is because I think you want to evolve. Well, of course, as you grow, your list changes and it grows with you. So I have the original list in there, and but I encourage people to sort of update their list as they go. And when we wrote our list, it was a lot of adventure travel, because that's all we knew, and that's what we wanted.
Right.
And now, you start to think, okay, what are the things people regret at the end of their life? I wish I would have worked less, right? This comes from Bronnie Ware's book, Top 5 Regrets of the Dying. I wish I would have lived for me, not other people. I wish I would have told people how I really felt, like expressed my emotions. And so a lot of these things around relationships, expressing myself, living for me. And so, when you write down your goals, it's like a little contract with yourself, and now you start to build accountability.
For sure, man. For sure. So for people out there listening, right? Something else you said that was so profound was when you see a friend do something,
Yeah.
somebody that you know, it makes it more relatable and it makes you believe that you can do it as well, right? So I want for you guys listening right now, Ben is your friend, okay? Let's just pretend Ben is your friend, and he's just a normal guy, right? Just like I'm a normal guy. So anything that I can do or you can do as well.
100%.
100%, right? Okay. I for example, I think of my cameraman / social media guy / podcaster / everything, Casper, right? And it's like, here he was just at the beginning of this year living in London, and now he's here in America and he's got all these wonderful, amazing clients. And it's just because that was his vision. That was his goal, So what I want to do is I want to expand people's thinking. And I want you to give me the 3 items on this list that you thought like, there was no way I'm going to be able to do that. And you actually freaking did it. And I want to hear the story.
Ooh, okay.
So what's number one?
Number 1 is, so the top 3, and then we can decide what story, because there's a lot of stories.
Okay.
And the top 3 are probably play basketball with President Obama.
You played basketball with President Obama?
At the White House.
At the White House? Yeah. Okay.
That was one of the most impossible things we could think of doing growing up in Canada.
Right.
Not even from the country.
Right.
And that was a huge one. Make a TV show in the US. Right, for us, like this was in the era of MTV being MTV in sort of heyday. That was the big dream. And then write a #1 New York Times bestselling author. The bestselling book was also a big goal, because one of the guys in the group is fairly dyslexic, and he, like, his English teacher was just like super mean to him when he was like going through his English 11, and just was like, berating him, just be like, you're not gonna, really do much. And so this was sort of like, we were the most unlikely foursome to write a book that would hit #1 New York Times. And so, through just sheer determination, a little bit of luck, and really asking other people for help, we were able to accomplish those things. And I think that it's daunting when you think about, okay, how do you do one of those huge dreams? Well, I'm a big advocate of like breaking it down to the easiest steps. What's the first thing you can think of?
So let's start with playing basketball with Barack Obama.
First, write it down. It's all of a sudden, it's not a thought. It's real. You've created something that doesn't exist. Now you have a reminder that it exists. That's why you write your bucket list. It creates accountability. Because what we don't have with these goals, like let's say your goal is to play ball with Obama, there's no deadline. Like what am I going to do? No, there's no consequences if you don't do that.
Right.
But the irony is there is a big consequence, because these are the regrets we have at the end of our life. Is these personal passions, right?
Sure.
So first, you write it down. Second, I come on this podcast and I say, my dream is to play basketball with President Obama. I talk about it, because then you give other people the opportunity to help.
And you just use your God-given ability to manifest, by the way.
Exactly. And I think that this also creates accountability, because if I tell you I'm trying to play basketball with Obama, no, I'm gonna play basketball with President Obama, then I feel accountable to you, because I've told the people listening. I wake up and think, damn, I told Danny I was gonna do that. Like, I gotta do it. Yeah. It's like if I tell you my next goal is to write a book, like, and I see you 6 months later, I'm like, you say, hey, how's the book coming? And I'm like, oh, it's like, I better start writing that book.
Yeah.
And so we wrote it down. We started to share it with people. And the first step was really driving to Washington. We just drove. We had this big purple transit bus that we put 4 bunk beds in the back so we could travel around the US and Canada. We drove to DC and we started asking people on the street if they knew anybody connected to the president.
You just literally started asking people on the street.
Yeah. It was not the smartest idea. I mean, it didn't get us very far. But then we were like, okay, we can send a bunch of emails, and we can get through to politicians' offices through their websites. So we peppered all these emails asking for a meeting, saying our biggest dream is to play basketball with Obama, to, trying to prove that anything's possible. Most people ignore us, but a few people actually, they responded. We took a meeting with some lower level officials. We found that we could sometimes convince them to convince their boss to meet with us in the meeting.
Yeah.
We get up the chain to the Secretary of Transportation, and he puts in the call to the White House. We're like, oh my God, this is it. We've done it. Get an official rejection email from the White House. They're like, sorry, we cannot arrange for this to happen.
Yeah.
And cut to, we find out that the person that we actually need to get a hold of is the president's personal aide, and he sets up all the basketball games with the president. He's a guy named Reggie Love. And so we found what we thought was his email, and we started sending emails challenging him and the president to a basketball game. So we like, meet us at the YMCA at 7 p.m. on Thursday. You, me, Johnny Dave versus you guys and the president. So of course they didn't show up, but we just kept doing this. We would picket outside the White House with signs. We sent letters. Finally, we leave DC and we're like, okay, we've done everything we can think of. Like, no one's meeting with us anymore. And we get a call. I got a block call from the personal aide of the president on my cell phone. And I'm like, he's like, what's this I hear about you wanting to play basketball against the president and I? And I'm like, yes, sir, this is why we're trying to do it. And I pull myself together and I explain to him. He's like, okay, I like this. I'm going to run it by the press team. They sign off on it. We can do this. Feel good about it. 2 weeks later, calls me back. He's like, talk with the press team. It's not going to happen. So like,
rejection number 2.
Oh yeah. And literally as a consolation prize, he was like, why don't you swing by the White House? Like next time you're in town, let me know. I'll give you a tour of the White House. So we found ourselves back in DC, and he gave us a personal tour, and he walked us through the West Wing, and he showed us the basketball courts, like pristine courts, and there's a presidential basketball. And as we're shooting around, we just hear,
shut the hell up.
Oh my God, it's the president. And he strolled on the court.
Shut the hell up.
Yeah.
Wait, time out. That almost just gave me goosebumps right there. Because, okay, so as he's giving you the tour.
Reggie Love, the personal aide of the president, is giving us a tour. We're on the courts, and we're shooting around for maybe 5-10 minutes. And all we hear is like, hey boys.
And he shows up.
Heard you're in town. Yeah. And strolled on. And we did not even think he was in town. He was not supposed to be in town. And we were absolutely floored.
And how long did you get to play for?
We were with him on the course for about 15 minutes. Yeah.
Nice.
There's a White House photographer there. And he's like, all right, guys, I got to get back to work.
That is awesome, man.
Yeah.
That is awesome.
And that was, what was so cool about that was, this was something that I vividly remember actually we did laugh when we wrote it down because it was so just impossible. Like it was a funny thing to think about. Right. To think about doing was a laugh.
Right.
And I was like, there's no way this will ever happen. And then I saw it happen with my own eyes. And then I thought, well, I guess I have no choice but to believe that anything is possible now.
That's right.
Because this was something that I thought was impossible. Here it happened. And so it changed my whole core belief system.
I love it.
And I think everyone has the ability to change their belief system based on proving to themselves that they can achieve these things.
For sure, man.
And I think every domino that sort of falls, it just takes a few before you realize like, wow, okay, if I hit a challenge, it's not, can I do this? It's does this align with who I am? I know it's going to take a lot of work, but is this something that I truly, truly value and I want to overcome this and go for this? And I think that, because of, look, I also feel like privileged to be able to done the things I've done. Like, and I really know that everyone's journey is different. Mm-hmm. And we talk about these big list items, and I think that it's important to unbury these big dreams if that is a dream that you have. Absolutely. But not just to go for a big dream because it's better than a small dream. There's no big dream is better than any other dream. And a bucket list is not about the accomplishments. It is about the things that are important to you. And it's just a reminder. And it just forces you to slow down to think about what those things are in a world that tends to bury them. And by the way, has been burying them for hundreds of years. That's why the poem, The Buried Life, was written in 1852.
Wow. Powerful. Powerful. It's almost as if though, what I just thought about something, man. Who wrote that book? Who wrote that poem?
Matthew Arnold.
And when?
1852. I think 1850, it's something like that. Now I'm second guessing myself, but it's almost 175 years ago. So that would be about 1852. Yeah.
Everyone's like, I got good news and bad news. The good news is Awaken is sold out. The bad news is if you didn't get your ticket My heart is broken that you're not coming. But listen, I've got more good news. I want you to go right now to dannymorel.com/awaken and sign up to be notified, because we are about to release the dates for the next Awaken. And I'm telling you right now, you're going to want to be a part of this list. I'm going to give you guys like a one-time offer the very first weekend that we announce it, that you have to take advantage of, and it's going to sell out again based off of all the messages we're getting right now. So go to dannymorel.com/awaken, and if you're coming, I'll see you there. If not, I'll see you at the next one. Do you do any work spiritually?
I'm a little bit, yeah. I'm working actually I just started working with an energy healer who is really, really unbelievable. I haven't really talked about this, so it's kind of good. And he does it virtually. And I was so skeptical, I was like, but what had happened was, I told you, we were talking about this before. Like, I do a ton of speaking engagements.
Sure.
Arguably too many this year. And so I went on this stint where I did 8 keynotes in 8 cities in 8 days. And I started to get a physical reaction from the pace and the stress. And my eye started to get itchy and swollen. And I realized that as I started to get under stress, it would get a little bit swollen, a little bit itchy. And I was talking with my therapist, who I love, and I was like, I don't know what's going on. And she's like, I feel like you need to talk with an energy healer. Anyways, she introduced me to this guy. And what was so cool about this is, and now I meet with him like once a week for 90 minutes, and he's done a lot of work in the East. And it's just like stuff that, for me growing up, like this, it's just definitely not a part of Western medicine.
For sure.
But most of the world, it is, and has been for a very, very long time. And so what he's doing is he's identifying these patterns that either are ancestral patterns that have been passed down, or that have happened when we were younger, and processing them, and also reprogramming. So it's breath into different parts of your body to let go of different feelings, or to process and to feel different wounds and stuff. I know it's like stuff you do a lot of. And so I've started to process some of this stuff that actually, when I told you I was really depressed, there was times where I just didn't want to think about that part of my life anymore. And I thought, you know what, that's not who I am. That was a moment in time, and I moved on. And when I think about that, sometimes it almost makes me feel like the things that I did when I was in that state almost make me feel ashamed. Like I get a physical reaction when I think about it. And so we just went right in there, and like,
that was me feeling your physical reaction.
Really? Yeah, exactly. And so, and so we did this breath work, and she was like, there's darkness in your heart that you don't want to give a voice to. There's darkness that you don't want to love. And I just started to cry, and just sort of let that emotion, that wave, just roll over me. And anyways, a lot of this reaction that I was having, physical reaction, was around this sort of relentless drive that, and I know you talk about this a lot too, of like validation of self-worth and love, so a lot of it, and this is what you talked about with Samson on the previous pod, was, just this sort of, this idea of loving yourself and understanding that every moment is perfect, and finding life force in the darkness, and as well as in the good stuff and in the light, but not being attached to the fun stuff, the great stuff, the praise, just like you're not attached to the shit.
Yeah.
But you experience them both, but that there's just as much life force in both of them. And so this has been a cool, learning experience for me over the past month or so.
Awesome, man. Awesome. Yeah. I bring this up because, if you're open to it, I'll connect you to my spiritual mentor / psychic. But, it just resonated with me that you could be connected to the guy who wrote that poem.
Oh, that's so, yeah.
And it could even potentially be you. Like, back.
Yeah. Well, I think that it's interesting to think about that this is the biggest problem right now, is that like, so this Cornell professor, and he's a psychologist named Tom Gilovich, did this study, a number of studies, but he wrote a paper in the psychology journal Emotion. And he found that, and this is really the purpose of the journal. And when I read this article or this study, I was blown away. Basically, he asked people on their deathbed, what's your number one regret? 76% of people said, I wish I would have lived for me, not other people or what was expected of me. And I thought, what?
That's huge.
Over 3/4 of the population is going to live their whole life and realize too late that they blew it? Like, how is not everybody talking about this? Like, why is this happening? And so then in that paper, he articulates the 3 reasons. And there's no deadlines with personal goals. So you got to create accountability. We're usually waiting to feel inspired, but you got to create your own inspiration through action. And then fear of what other people think, or fear of failure.
Yeah.
So I thought, okay, well, this is crazy. But then I thought, but wait a sec. But this poem talked about this over 150 years ago. This is not a new problem. It's just getting worse. And if this guy talked about this same problem 150 years ago, we felt it. Now, that was 15 years ago. Now there's research coming out. This is the biggest regret we have in our deathbed. This is a huge problem. And so that's why I speak, and that's why I wrote the journal, to try and give people permission to do the shit they want to do. Because people think it's selfish, but it's not.
Well, what is selfish?
Yeah, exactly.
It's like the greatest thing you could be is selfish.
Because you're being who you are.
You're being who you are, bro.
And then you can actually serve others to the greatest.
Man. That's right. That's the only way you can ever give to others, love others, teach others, be with others, show others, is if you first give to yourself, live with yourself, be with yourself, teach yourself, show yourself. You have to be the number one priority. And I think it's interesting because society makes you think that is selfish, or they bring, guilt around that, or whatever the case may be. It's part of the journey that I'm dealing with right now, even, as much work as I've done, but it's actually where you find your truest power. You know what I mean? It's by being okay with who you are, with what you want, what you desire, and what you don't desire, and being okay with that in your own skin, And then I think what I love, and I got to be honest, man, I'm being inspired. People send me books all the time. So I'm just like, they send me books and gifts and all this, but like this one I'm going to actually do.
Thank you.
Because there's so much, and it's inspiring me in this very moment to, like, there's so much that I want to do, and to be truthful, there's a lot that I've done, but there's more there, So my next question is, and I want to get to the other 2, which was writing the book. But before we do, like, you just keep adding to the list then. So it's not 100. It becomes
whatever you like. Think about it as like if you turned your inside out, what is your true, this is like your purpose list. It's like all little purposes, that stuff that gives you energy. So I like to think about it instead of thinking, you feel. So what are you curious about? What excites you when you think about it? What gives you energy? What would your 90-year-old self regret not doing if you ask them, should I do this or should I not do it? So just the things that you want to do for fun or bring you joy and happiness. That's really all it is. So it could be, climbing Everest. It could be more time with my family. It could be telling someone how you really feel. It could be reaching out to someone you've lost touch with. One of the top 5 regrets of the dying is, I wish I would have stayed in contact with friends. That doesn't cost any money.
No, simple as
text, phone call, set up a dinner, plan a trip. But the problem is that we get so busy and we get so wrapped up in what we think we should be doing, and we tell ourselves that it's not a priority because we're going to have time and we're going to do it. We're going to do it next year, and so we get in this pattern of continually putting it off, which is the big thing I took away from the research. Is how powerful accountability is. Because if you step back and look at the workplace, it really it's just different layers of accountability. A leader to keep you accountable. Salary keeps you accountable because you don't want to lose the salary, right? You don't want to look bad in front of your team, right? You don't want to get fired. So there's all these structures of accountability, but with these personal goals, you don't have them. So how do you create that around your personal goals? Well, you write your bucket list, creates a bit of accountability. You talk about it. Because by the way, the only way that we cross things off our list is through the help of other people. People stepped up in the most unexpected ways. It's the only reason we cross things off our list. So when you got to move through the fear of what other people think. But when you are vulnerable and you put yourself out there, pretty magical things happen.
Yeah.
And we found that again and again and again. But you have to push through that. What are these people going to think? What if I fail? And the truth is, like, people just aren't thinking about you as much as you think they are.
No. They're thinking about themselves.
Exactly.
Absolutely. So the second one was write a New York Times bestselling book.
Yeah. So we wrote a book called What Do You Want to Do Before You Die, which we asked, thousands of people. We took all the answers that we thought or we felt moved us in some way, made us laugh, inspired us, made us emotional. And we found artists to bring those to life in different ways. And so we tell our story through the book, and then there's all these dreams that are meant to trigger and spark your thought, like, spark something inside you that you might want to do. And so that was a trip putting that together, and then launching that. We actually sent it to space, the book. We worked with this is a funny story. Duncan and Johnny, the brothers, they had this neighbor who was pretty eccentric, and he was an aeronautical engineer. And we went to him, was like, can we send our book to space somehow? And he's like, well, I guess it's possible. And so we got a weather balloon. Weather balloons go up, and then they pop and they come down, but that's how they measure. So we attached a weather balloon to this device that we made, which was just like a metal box where we attached the book and put a GoPro and a GPS. And then we went out to the middle of the desert and we put a parachute on it. And we launch it up, and it goes up, it goes up, it goes up. And so it's recording on the GoPro that we can, get a still frame of the photo of it in space. When hopefully it gets like the curvature of the earth. And it goes up, and then it starts to come down. And then we're tracking it in the desert in the truck because we got the GPS. About 300, 400 feet up, we lose the GPS signal. And so now we're just scanning the desert, trying to find it. Don't find it. 2 days later, we get a call from the aeronautical engineer. He's like, the GPS just went back on. I see it. And we're like, oh my God, there's no way that the GoPro made it. And he goes out, finds it, GoPro made it. And if you Google the Buried Life book Space, you'll see this photo of the book with the earth in the background. You can see the
I got to check it out.
Yeah. So we did a lot of fun stuff like that to launch it, literally, I guess. And then make a TV show was, the one that we did on MTV. We got offered a show in Canada after the very first tour. It was news worldwide, this road trip, and we cut a little trailer and put it on YouTube. But they wanted to own the whole concept, and we weren't going to be in control of the creative. So we ended up turning it down. And long story short, after that, thought we had made a huge mistake because we had spent all our money on the film and didn't realize how expensive post-production was and, all this stuff. But we ended up, met someone that knew someone in LA, and I started doing trips down. And so it took, 2.5 years, but we ended up selling the show to MTV, but we were able to maintain the creative control and be executive producers. And so that was just a big moment for us, because we always wanted to make something that our friends would be inspired by. And we knew that we had to be able to keep our fingerprints on it. So, I tell this story in whatever it is, 10, 20 minutes, and it feels like a rocket ship. But keep in mind, this is years and years, and there are a lot of dips in the road.
For sure.
And, talk about accountability. If I would have tried this whole mission on my own, no way I would have gone more than a couple weeks. But because I had 3 other guys, and whenever I felt like there's no way I can go on, this is not going to work, they would pick me up.
And you mean in the checking off of all of the items on the list?
Yeah, just continuing to go after, and especially with the big ones, So
they stayed on you.
Yeah, and same when they felt like it wasn't going to work, I would or another one of the guys. So, this accountability that we felt to one another to continue to, we got to make the show, or we got to continue to make the movie, or we can continue to do this, was ultimately what drove us to doing it.
How many accountability partners do you think one should have?
I think one is great, but the more the merrier, like I give you an example. Like if let's say we plan a trip and we're like, every year we're going to do this trip. We're probably going to do the trip every year, but I think we're going to have a higher chance of doing it if you get a couple friends and I get a couple friends. And it's like, then it's a men's group or something. And so I don't just feel accountable to you, I feel accountable to the other people that are going because we've committed to doing this trip every year.
Right.
And so I think that the more people you can enroll, and the good thing about sharing your goals is you also are able to let people know what is important to you so that they can support you.
Sure.
So for instance, let's say you want to write a book and you've had this inside you your whole life, and finally you're like, you need to tell your family, or you need to tell your boss or your team, and you're like, you know what, I'm going to start writing this book. And then let's say down the line, you say, you know what, I've got this writing class that I started. Hey, is it okay if I take Thursdays off at like 4 instead of 5? Mm-hmm. And your boss is like, yeah, that's your thing, right? You want to write a book. Like, of course. Yeah. Or your family's like, listen, I got you. I'm going to take care of the kids. You go to the writing class. So by sharing, it makes it real. You build accountability, but you also get support, if you're sharing it to the right people.
I love it. I love it. Yeah. So if somebody is like brand new at this and they're getting inspired and they're thinking to themselves, okay, I want to start my list. Where would they start? I think step number 1 would be to get one of these.
The journal helps. I mean, I think you want to write your list in a physical book or journal.
Location somewhere.
Yeah, because this is like where your dreams live forever.
Right.
Right. You're gonna want a special place for them to live, and that's why I wanted it to be like beautiful. A place like that you could have a book that you could have out that you want to write in, because if you just write it on a piece of paper or even like a notes app on your phone, it's you're going to lose it or it's going to get buried. So I would say first find a journal that you want to write in. And then,
well, hang on.
Yeah.
Because I've been in your shoes and I want to say something. Just get this journal. Yeah. Just get this journal. No, and I'm going to say why. It's like, and this is this journal in and of itself, and you, Ben, I got to be honest with you, man, you're an example of what I teach is that, like provide value to the world and money will never be an issue. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. As long as you could tap into your genius, your gifting, whatever it is that you feel the world needs. In this case, it's to do things before you die, right? You didn't do this for money. Mm. I know you didn't do this for money. You did this because of your experience, and you thought, man, people really need a place to put all of this in. And if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it really, really nice in a beautiful fashion. As a result of the value you're providing, you get compensated for it. This is the law of the universe, and everyone has the ability to tap into that.
I first of all, thank you that you see that, and that it means a lot to me. But also, I agree that when you find that thing that you feel is, I guess like it's a difficult thing to explain because you almost feel like it's easy for you to do. And you almost feel guilty doing it. Sometimes when I do my talks, I'm like, how am I getting paid to do this?
Yeah.
But I see the impact that it makes, and I love doing it, and so I keep doing it. And because, as I told you before, people can't come to my speaking engagements because they're for companies. I was like, I want to create something where people can start to create their own inspiration through action and start to build accountability. And so I think that yes, get the journal. If you can't get the journal, that's okay. Go to writeyourlist.com. So it's writeyourlist.com. Use the 10 categories on the website as a guide. So just start to break down your list into more and create a structure. So it's not just you're looking at a blank page saying, what's my life's purpose? Right. So, okay, look at those 10 categories. Travel and adventure. That's an easy place to start. Any way you want to go, and so in the journal, you write your list in 10 categories, but there's prompts and there's ideas of list items in each of those categories. So you start to get the brain moving. So now that you've written your list in a journal and you've covered, you don't need to have goals in all those 10. Like there's, again, no rules, just like, but think about it, because like there's probably something you're not thinking about that you're going to regret. Maybe it's a relationship, or maybe it's something that you thought was selfish, or sometimes you just think like, you know what? It's not a big deal. Like, yeah, I want to do that. Like, I want to scuba dive, but like, it's like, no, that's fucking important. Go scuba diving. That's what you want to do. You have to do it. And by the way, scuba diving is like one of the best things I've ever done. It's like you go into a whole new world. You appreciate, there's no other thing you can do right now that transmits you to a completely different world than scuba diving. You see, you totally feel out of your element. You appreciate nature. Like, it's amazing. So don't devalue these things. They are important. And as you said, the biggest gift you can give the world is being true to yourself.
Yeah.
And these are what these things are. So the next thing is like, okay, now you stopped long enough to think about what's important to you, which by the way, most people don't. That's why writing the list is so important, because it forces you to slow down. Then you're like, okay, now I got to build accountability, and I got to start creating inspiration through action. I got to create some movement. And so create a deadline, share it with people, create a reward. So if you want to go to the gym 3 times a week, I used to buy this smoothie that I've loved, right? At the end of every workout. And I would just go, I was like, I want that smoothie. I better go work out.
Yeah.
Right? Like, create a real reward that you get something each time you do it, or once you finish it, you finish the marathon, you're like, you know what, then I'm taking myself to Hawaii. And break it down to smaller steps. You know, I think the fear is the one that's the hardest to get through, but I think it's what's valuable for me is to, instead of thinking about fear, because you're never going to conquer the fear. You're not going to be ready to do it. You're never going to feel like, all right, I don't feel that fear anymore. But that discomfort actually means growth, as you know, right? Like, so it's like a tax you have to pay to achieve your goals. That's all exactly you look at. Yeah. So it's really about the risks, not the fears. So make a list of the risks. And so what are the real risks? Is it a risk of what John thinks, or what Mary thinks? Is that a real risk? Might be. Like, it might be your partner, you know, it might be your boss. And then but if it's just John or fucking Mary, who cares?
Yeah.
So is it a financial risk? Okay, there's a real risk. Are you going to compromise the family? Real risk, you know? Is are they real needs that you have? But a lot of times they're fears versus risks. And so I think it's important to just write those down. And then you're looking at the facts, at least, not what you think, or it's less ego involved and that type of thing. So that's what I found helpful. And I think too is thinking about, and at the end of every, so basically you write your list and then you start a before and after page, and that's how you track each goal. And at the end, you check it off, you say the date that you did it, you say, what was my favorite part? And it's like, who can I help do this? So the last piece is like, start to help other people with their dreams.
Love that.
And I think that's, you immediately get something back from doing that.
Yeah. For sure. Awesome. I love it, man. Where do people find this?
You can get it on Amazon or writeyourlist.com.
Writeyourlist.com.
Yeah. And I would say, you know, in the spirit of creating accountability, write your list, share it with us. You know, take a photo, tag Danny and I so we can see it. We can be your accountability buddies.
I'm going to write my list.
Yeah. I'd love to see it.
Yeah, for sure. I'm definitely 100% going to do this.
Is anything coming to mind as you start to think about what you might put on your list?
Well, the first one is my book.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cause it's there and it's started, and it's like, I so easily speak to an audience, but to write is, you know, something a little bit challenging for me. And I hired a coach. I'm working on it. I know it's going to be a great book. I know it's going to change lives.
It's another great example of accountability.
Yeah.
You're paying someone. So when you pay a personal trainer, you're going to show up more because you've got that sunk cost. Like, I got to do it. So that's a great way to create accountability.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's a big one. That's a big one.
Yeah. Yeah. That's going to be a really cool piece for people.
Yeah. Yeah. For
It's
sure.
scary though. I feel the same way because I don't feel like I'm a writer. And I know there are people that are writers.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And that's not me. But what I do love is like, I do love writing my newsletter. And I feel like, you know, my best writing is when I feel like I look at it and like, that's me. Like, it doesn't need to be good writing. It just needs to feel like I'm saying it.
Yeah.
And I think that, you know, I would imagine you're the same way. Like, if the real work is being able to translate everything that you do into your words on paper.
For sure. That's it. That's it. Yeah. So that's one,
Yeah.
but there's a whole bunch.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the other thing is, I'm sure I'll be inspired by some of the things that, you know, you've written or that other people have written as well. Sometimes we get so stuck in our paradigm,
Yeah.
you know, that it's good to see what other people are doing.
Yeah. Yeah. You get inspired by other people's dreams. Yeah.
For sure. Where do people hear more about you?
Probably I'm most active on Instagram.
Are you?
So it's
Okay.
just, yeah, at Ben Nemtin.
Are we connected there?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, cool. I
Yeah.
just want to make sure.
Yeah. And so that's, I'm having like the most fun there. Do you think it's hard to talk about being true to yourself, like being true to yourself on social? And that's kind of like been my goal now, is to be a little more like just self-expressed and not worry so much about what other people think. And so that's been always a challenge for me, you know, is that someone like I was just growing up before social. So, you know, I think kids that grow up with sort of more second nature, but you know, it's very hard to fucking not care what other people think when you're on social, because that's what the purpose of social media is when it becomes your business, is what other people are thinking about what you do.
I got to tell you, brother, like that's where the whole game changes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Take it from, you know, a guy who was 100% in the I am a real estate broker space,
Yeah.
who knew that's not where he wanted to be, and who, like, I genuinely want to help people experience some of the spiritual growth and truth that I have participated in myself and that now see, so that people truly understand who they really are. And, you know, and then the other part for me was, you know, being in that space, but then like putting myself in the box that most people put themselves in. Like, what are you? Are you a spiritual guy? Are you a health guy? Are you a money guy? Are you a sex and relationships guy? Are you a business guy? And I'm like, fuck that, I'm everything.
Yeah.
Because I am, and we all are.
You're a
You know what I
guy.
mean? I'm a guy. That's it. I'm a guy, and there's a money part to my life. There's a health part to my life. There's a relationship part to my life. There's a business part to my life. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And if we're honest with ourselves, that's how we all are. You know, once you finally get okay with that and not need to be in a box, you know, I think that's where like people really connect with you, man.
I'm so glad you said that. It reminded me of something that's was a pivotal moment about 5 years ago, before I got into speaking. And I had started the production company with the same buddies that we started the whole Buried Life thing with. We were making shows for other people like us when we were on the coming up into the television game. But I was just running myself ragged, and I was not happy, and I didn't love like being like having networks as my client, and it was just sort of felt like an ad agency almost. You just like come up with ideas, they'll never see the light of day. And we had just got a point where we got investment to do the production company. After 3 years of grinding, we sold a couple shows, and now we're like, we did it. And I was like, oh my God, this is not the end. This is the beginning.
Yeah.
And I was like, I told the guys, I was like, I don't think I can do this. And I was really struggling with, but I just put 3 years of my life into this thing. And now I'm just going to walk away. And I was talking with my uncle, who is a very, very talented producer, and he was in his 70s. I was like, his name's Bill. He sadly passed away from COVID a year and a half ago. But I was having a conversation 5 years ago, and I was like, Uncle Bill, like, I don't know what to do. Like, I built this production company with my buddies, and now like I'm just not happy, and I don't know what I want to do, and I'm worried about like just leaving it all after I built this thing. And he's like, well, you're not starting from the beginning. You're not starting again. You're recycling your career. And he's like, we should all recycle our career whenever we feel like we need to, because as we grow and change, of course, our career can also grow and change.
That's right.
He's like, I just retired, and his dream is to be a stand-up comedian, and now he was going into stand-up comedy and starting to go to clubs and do stand-up. And I was like, that shifted things for me just enough to be like, yeah, you know what? Of course I'm not starting again. I'm just taking everything I learned as a producer and pivoting into whatever the next thing is. And I think we feel this obligation because we have put time and energy into something, and it's like this sunk cost into a career, or we've climbed the ladder and we're at like rung 7. And if we start somewhere else, we're at rung 1 again. But none of that is really true. It's the most important piece is that you are authentic to the person you are, because that you might go from rung 1 to rung 20, which is what happened to me for speaking. All of a sudden I was doing something that actually I was supposed to be doing, and everything started to take off. And so this idea of recycling your career gives you a little more freedom to think about, okay, yeah, I've done this, but I could just take everything I've done and shift and move into something else. All these skills, they'll apply to real estate, or they'll apply to, a number of different things. And so don't feel like you're stuck. Like, you're not stuck. You can change your life in any moment. And that sounds cliche, but it just
So
is
true.
the truth.
It is the truth.
You decide and you start to move in a new direction, and then you've done it.
Wonderful. So Ben, what's your Instagram handle?
At Ben Nemtin, my full name.
And website is?
So the Bucket List Journal website is writeyourlist.com. And then my website is bennemtin.com.
And Nemtin is Nemtin, right?
You're good.
I love it. That's a wrap. Thank you so much, man. This was fun.
Thank you.
Very inspiring.
Thank you, man. Thank you so much.
And that's this week's episode for The Higher Self. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you were inspired. Like, go live and go create the life of your dreams. There's nothing stopping you. And this is the one life in this lifetime that you have. So go make it the best that you can. We'll see you next week. Thanks for watching or listening. If this week's episode resonated with you deeply and you're ready to discover more about yourself, go to DannyMorel.com and check out some of our upcoming events and our resources. Or if you'd like to learn more about our coaching programs, simply shoot us a message on Instagram and one of our team members will reach out to you immediately.